We are live. Welcome back to our next Decent Mess Spotlight. Today we are here with life architect Jim Pehkonen. Jim is the founder of Amazing Life Design. He helps with trauma in men. Jim, introduce yourself.
So, my name is Jim Pehkonen. I am your life architect, and the core of my business is assisting people to process trauma, especially men. One of the most interesting things about this thing we call life is that we live in the experience of our thinking. And when you have unprocessed trauma, it tends to create a world that you may be insecure, you may not be succeeding where you are, or things that should be easy are very difficult. As your life architect, I assist you not only to understand the roots of your trauma, to process it such that you create an amazing life. That's a little bit about me.
So, what got you in this industry?
So in December, I will have been coaching for 20 years.
Wow.
Of that 20 years, over half the time was spent in addiction recovery. What got me here is the fact that as a young person, I experienced a lot of trauma, and it took me more than 20 years to heal my trauma. And here's one thing I want to say is it should not take anybody that long. It may have been perfect for me, but it's not perfect for you. So as a result of that, I have spent roughly the last 25 years not only healing myself, but assisting thousands to heal from their trauma and live an amazing life.
I love it. And, let's unpack your childhood.
Mhm.
So, how was your childhood, and did you experience any trauma in your childhood?
So most people, as I look back on my childhood, I think it was normal, but I had some very unique traumas.
Mm.
As a child, I was abused. I was sexually abused by both genders. So, and the primary abuse was my parents went to Europe and left me with a pedophile. So that impacted my entire life. It impacted high school, college, and beyond. And I have healed that to the point that I can now speak about it without any emotion. And it's funny because I would say I had a normal childhood, although a very high percentage of females have experienced sexual abuse as young people, and it is over 50 to over 60% of the men have experienced sexual trauma or emotional trauma. So trauma is at the core of my coaching. And if you have or know of a young man, mid-teenage years, 15 to upper years, or if you're a man that's in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and you know that something's there, now is the time to get it processed out and create and live an amazing life.
An interesting stat that 50 to 60% of men have
Yeah.
trauma, just can't process it. So you brought
Yep.
up about unprocessed trauma.
Mhm.
And I had a former provider when we did a documentary about PTSD, and I'd love to speak a little bit about that a little bit later. But she said that everybody has some form of trauma. They just might not know.
Mhm.
So
Yes.
how do people process trauma?
So I go through a process to where they deepen the understanding not only of the trauma, but of the impact the trauma has had on their life. So the processing is done through a conversation. And in that conversation, we meet weekly and you also journal. And the thing about processing trauma is that everybody's trauma is a little unique. So in working with me, we are working, your life is the program. And I am the guide that gets you to understand not only what that trauma meant or what you may have created it to mean, but then we look and you understand where it impacts you in all the different areas of life. And the deeper you understand something, what arises is the ability to transform slash process slash heal slash whatever word you want to create, to where you create and live an amazing life. Does that make sense?
It does, because what's interesting, and I'm going to show you this in a second, but a provider said that talk therapy does not do a good job when it comes to PTSD specifically.
PTSD involves reliving the past in the present, affecting the entire human organism, not only the mind, but the body as well. As the mind recalls the original experience, the body produces the same responses as when the event occurred. And it is not something just reserved for military vets. People from all walks of life suffer with PTSD at various levels. Any experience that is traumatic and left unhealed leads to PTSD, whether that's birth trauma, feeling abandoned or rejected by your parents, a car accident, being bullied in school, losing a loved one, or any form of abuse, be it physical, mental, emotional, verbal, sexual, or even spiritual. Not every single person who has spent time in the armed services, whether military or protection services, suffer from some form of PTSD. Combat, however, is a major cause of PTSD. Imagine, if you will, being in the battlefield. Both your mind and body are being pushed beyond your normal limits. Triggers and bullets are flying. Guns are firing. Bombs are being dropped. Your brother in arms sitting next to you is injured. And to top it off, you're receiving orders to kill innocent men, women, and children. This is trauma, except you have no time to deal with this trauma, no way to process it, because you are in the heat of battle. Essentially, you have to shove it all down, suppress it. Every feeling, every emotion, you have to remain focused on the task at hand. So, shove down where? In your body. And until healed, these traumas will keep you stuck in a state of chronic fight, flight, or freeze. Hearing of fireworks can send you straight back into the battle zone, re-traumatizing you all over again. Smelling gunpowder can send you straight back into the battle zone, re-traumatizing you as well. Watching a war movie can re-traumatize you. This is the essence of PTSD. PTSD affects not just the mind, but the body. Sufferers often experience chronic muscle tension, digestive issues, immune system dysfunction, cardiovascular problems, problems sleeping, problems being in relationships, just problems functioning from day to day. Now imagine you're in a heavy combat zone doing this day in, day out, month after month. That's a lot of trauma. So what do you do when you return to your normal life? Well, you learn to cope with the suppressed trauma with any distraction you can find. Alcohol, sex, porn, violence, drugs, gambling, or any other high-risk behavior. So, what are your options to heal? Well, when you return home, your country may provide you with some form of pharmaceutical drugs to numb the symptoms you're experiencing, or in the form of talk therapy, which only deals with the way you experience the trauma. Neither options addresses where the trauma is stored in the body and how to truly heal it.
He's going through a story. And in
Mm-hmm.
that documentary, a man had PTSD. He was a former
Mm-hmm.
Israeli soldier. And in this scene specifically, he outlines how people with PTSD traverse through life,
Mhm.
whether it's the way that they react to stress and trauma and triggers. The
Yep.
fact that a lot of people with PTSD, when they come back to the States, they have no outlet for their PTSD.
Yes.
So when he talks about the outlets that people have, it's really one of two options: it's pharmaceuticals or it's talk therapy. And
Yep.
he mentions how the problem with talk therapy is that you never go into the body. That's why
Right.
he mentions
I'm gonna actually talk about a third option because there's a third option that's out there now, but keep going.
so. And when he talks about it, he mentions how people that have trauma, and as they're
Hmm.
dealing with this, it gets trapped in your body. So
Hmm.
it might get trapped in your lower back. It might get
Yep.
trapped in your solar plexus. It's trapped
Hmm.
somewhere in your body and stored as pain.
Yes. Exactly.
So he has this theory that with somatic yoga in conjunction
Hmm.
with plant medicine, so you can get out of the mind completely. So when you're on
Yep.
these psychedelics, whether it's bufo, combo, even marijuana, you're outside of your
I
brain.
would not really marijuana. Marijuana is just a numbing agent, but I'll say whether it's psychedelics, whether it's ketamine, whether it's mushrooms,
Mhm.
bufo, those things are showing incredible resolution with the proper talk therapy.
Mm.
Because you have to have both of those.
Mhm.
Now, you also mentioned pharmaceuticals, and you need to understand that most typical pharmaceuticals, once you get on them, they want you to be on them your entire life.
Yep.
That does not heal the PTSD. It just buries it down and numbs it. And in the event you get off those things, now that PTSD is going to come up. And one of the reasons that talk therapy, tradition, and I'm going to say as opposed to talk therapy, I'm going to talk to traditional therapy, okay?
Mhm.
Because in traditional therapy, most therapists, you go in every week and you talk about how was the last week with your trauma? How are you doing? Okay, great. How is the last week with your trauma? And you're really not doing anything to process that trauma and have your body heal from it. The process that I use has you understand the roots of your trauma, which, if you have PTSD for any reason at all, the roots of your trauma happened long before the PTSD incidents happened. But
Mm.
yet, when that incident happens and you now have PTSD, it is reinforcing a very young age trauma, and your mind gets caught into looped stories. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
One of the things that I know is we create our life in the realm of story. And
Mm.
in that realm of story, if you do not understand the roots of your story, you are bound to keep having cyclical things happen. You're bound to keep having cycles and cycles and cycles. This morning I was talking to a gentleman, and one of his frustrations is the same thing keeps happening to me again and again and again. And we did just a little bit of the work that I do, and bam, all of a sudden he saw the root of it. He saw one of the roots of it. And in seeing one of the roots, all of a sudden he's like, I can see why my trauma repeats itself and repeats itself and repeats itself. So, one of the things that I bring to this is an understanding of how to process trauma.
Mm.
I am not a therapist, I am a coach. And one of the things that I do use after working with somebody for a time to where we both understand the roots of your trauma is then and only then can we bring psychedelic medicine in. Now, here's
Mm.
a little side note about psychedelic medicine in America today. It is still illegal.
Mhm.
And I don't want to go into all the history of it, but from the 60s, as a result of what occurred in the 60s, psychedelics are illegal. And yet they are showing so much promise, not only for military and law enforcement, but for regular people. Because, like you said before, we have all experienced levels of trauma. And yet, the deeper you understand your trauma, the easier it is to transform your experience of life. Now, here's one of the things that I just got to make really clear, right? After our work, your trauma is still going to be there. But the emotions and the things that drag you down and the things that pull you into this dark depression, those emotions, we get to transmute them. Yes, I had a traumatic childhood and it's cloudy outside. That is how I view life. Yes, I had a traumatic childhood and this is a glass of water. Both of those things are true, but I don't know if you noticed, there's no charged energy around saying the word my trauma. Does that make sense?
It does. And what I love about what Jim does is that, again, for people with PTSD, CPTSD, or even trauma, there needs to be multiple options. And having someone like Jim that's going to help you where maybe you prefer something more traditional, but you see that talk therapy just hasn't done the best job for you, your trauma, or other people that are in your lives trauma. But you don't want to go super extreme. You don't want to go to plant medicine. You don't want to go to Paraguay. You don't want to go to Panama or Costa Rica or wherever.
Right.
You want to stay where you are. You want to get the healing. You want to do it traditional means, but you want to do it in a different way. And what Jim does, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, and speak more on this, is that Jim will coach you through your trauma. And if you need additional things like the plant medicine, then you'll do that. The problem is that people are pushed to an either or. I have to do as much plant medicine as possible and fill my cells with plant medicine on top of plant medicine. And then I'm in this constant loop where I feel good. And then 9 months later, I got to do plant medicine again and over again. Or I do talk therapy and I'm going to talk therapy for months on end, and there's no results. So Jim, tell the audience, why is coaching the best option? And what's a typical period that your clients work with you for?
So I'll start with that last question first. Typically, my clients work with me anywhere from 6 months to 18 months, depending upon the severity of your trauma. Second thing I want to speak to, the difference between traditional coaching, traditional therapy, and the coaching I provide. With traditional therapy, and I'm going to repeat myself for a minute, you're going week after week after week, and you're discussing how is the trauma this week? How is your trauma this week? How is your trauma this week? You're not doing anything to heal it. And then in addition, oftentimes they put you on pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
Once you are on a pharmaceutical, the intention is to be on it for a very long time. And the experience I have had with clients is it tends to numb your experience of life.
Interesting.
Let's talk about my coaching.
Yeah.
With my coaching, we start right here where you are. We go into the past a little bit. The first session or two, we go into the past, but then we're actually, how are you doing this week? We are looking future forward, having you understand how you create this experience of life. And the questions you bring to our sessions assists you to deepen the understanding of how you create this experience of life. And as you deepen your understanding and as you understand the roots of your trauma and how those roots impact you today, that is where transformation occurs. Yeah. Because the deeper you understand this crazy thing called our mind, right? And our mind, right, we have a light side and a shadow side. And if you spend a lot of your life in the shadow side, it's almost like you are putting a filter on for how you create this world, and you're seeing your world. But the deeper you go with the understanding, the filter goes away. You begin to see things clearly. You see that shadow come up and you say, you know something? Not today. Nope, not today. Go away. And that's what transformation is. Transformation is being in the same situation you may have been 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, 6 months, a year ago, that now you have a new response. And it's not a trauma-based response. It is typically through love or through understanding. It is a love-based response. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so let's unpack that. So let's talk
Please.
about your experience. So this PDF file, right? How did you get to a place where, number one, it didn't stay in your mind? Number two, you get to a place of overcoming to transformation to living a life. What is the process that you did in overcoming so that others can follow the same process?
So I did a lot of and I don't know if you want to follow my same process, because it literally took 15 to 20 years for me to understand. I took a lot of gender study classes that started in college. I did some worldwide transformation organizations. I also, in where I was living at the time, I did some local transformation stuff. I did all these different programs to where I could understand how I put together how my mind works. I have an understanding of how my mind works. What I bring is, you don't have to go through 15 to 20 years of coursework to get where I got. You and I sit down, and through coaching conversations and through the journaling, so I can see where your mind state is, that is where the process of transformation occurs. Your life is the blueprint for the program. This isn't the top 10 ways to be happy or the top 10 ways to be successful. It is understanding your life to the point that when you have thoughts come up, you can see the root of those thoughts, and you can make life decisions based upon a deep understanding, not based upon the traumas of your past. Does that make sense?
It does, because essentially what you're saying is that the problem that you had was you went external. You went
We all
outside
do.
of yourself.
Yeah,
And that's
we
why
all
it
do.
took so long. Versus when
Well,
people go internal, it takes a shorter time to overcome the trauma.
right. And the process that I use is based upon all of those courses. It's based upon 10 ayahuasca ceremonies. It's based upon some peyote ceremonies I did with some Native Americans. It's based upon work I did with a spiritual leader of a Native American tribe. It's based upon everything I took, that I coalesced. And when I meet with people in that initial fee waived session, we can see if working together works, because it doesn't always work.
And that's why you're a life architect, because
Yes.
you look at the holistic picture. You're not forcing people to book with you. You're not trying to sell anybody. And also, you are pooling, because what works most, and I found this across the board with providers, is a multimodal approach. And as you mentioned, you're pulling from a multiplicity of sources in order to give your clients the best outcome possible. And that's what I like about what you do, because looking at your website, and if you want to check out his website, go to amazinglifedesign.com. First, you got to overcome past trauma, and then you can build a meaningful life. And what I find so interesting about traditional talk therapy is, like you mentioned, It's never about overcoming past trauma. It's about coping with past trauma, taking medicine so that even with plant medicine, like you mentioned earlier, the problem with plant medicine is that it goes back to, instead of overcoming the trauma, you're essentially living in this state of enlightenment, whether it's ayahuasca, whatever. But then as soon as you get out of that state, your trauma comes back.
Well, and that's what is the most, you want to know what the most important part of psychedelic medicine is? This is where 90% of your transformation is. What part of it do you think? Do you think it is I'm going to give you two choices, right? Is it the actual psychedelic experience, or is it the integration that occurs after the psychedelic experience?
B, integration, right?
It's absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if you have the proper integration, what you will see is the psychedelic experience opens things up, but then the integration is where the healing happens. And the integration, another word for integration, is conversation. And when you're conversing with somebody who knows the questions to ask, that is when you transform your experience. Because if you think about it, we all know people, I'm going to use psychedelic mushrooms, right? We all know people that have taken psychedelic mushrooms, but if they do no integration, they're just going to return back to their old programming.
Yeah.
But if you do psychedelics, and I don't care if it's ketamine, I do not consider marijuana psychedelics. Marijuana is a numbing agent. That's why they call it dope, because it dopes you down.
Interesting.
But if you do ketamine, if you do, and you mentioned a bunch of them, psychedelic mushrooms,
Combo.
exactly, any of those. But then if you integrate, that's where you heal. And one of the things I have found in the last few years is that people who properly do psychedelics and do the integration, they heal so much faster than other people. Faster than therapy, faster than coaching. I would love to work myself out of a job because society is healed.
Well, and that's why you're so valuable and why people need to connect with Jim. Because as you mentioned, it's so much deeper, because people might think, oh, well, I'll just do psychedelics. But it's the person like Jim that knows the questions to ask you. He knows how to get into your subconscious. He knows how to get you to get to that place. Because a lot of times people need someone to get them there.
Yes. Yeah, it is. And I know some of you are going to say, well, Jim did it. Yeah, Jim did it. And it took him 15 to 20 years.
Exactly.
And here's the thing. If you have 15 to 20 years, go for it. But may I give you a very relevant recent example?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, as of, y'all know that Charlie Kirk was assassinated a while back, correct?
Yes, sir.
At the Charlie Kirk assassination, 50 feet from it was a former client and his brother. In line to ask questions was their brother-in-law, less than 20 feet from the assassination. Wow. The moment this happened, the father of the brothers, and I've done work with this entire family, called me and said, I need help. I had two people that were 50 feet away and one person was in line and they're not doing well. That evening of September 10th, we had a 3-hour Zoom session with 7 people. Let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 people. I processed all 3 of the ones that had been there, and then I also processed everybody else. I did some follow-up work. 6 of the 7 are doing phenomenal. The one that was 20 feet away, he needs further work. But the father said, since he owns his own company, if he wants to work with me, he's got to reach out, and we're talking. But imagine these people witnessing an assassination and they don't need therapy. If you were to reach out and ask them how they're doing fine.
That's crazy. because it's such, and that's the thing too, to your point, is that, yeah, people can say, oh, well, Jim took 20 years. But the reality is that especially in the US, trauma is occurring every single day.
Mhm. Yeah.
Traumatic
Yeah.
events are occurring at a rapid level. Hurricanes, natural disasters
Yes.
in general, mass shootings,
Even
people often
even
so.
sexual abuse, emotional abuse, all these things are a very commonplace today. And one of the reasons that I want to focus on men, and especially young men, is in the last 10 years, it has become far more difficult to be a man in this society.
Mhm.
And if we raise strong, empowered, healthily masculine men, we get to be part of the solution, not part of the problem.
So let's unpack that, because you're right. Men have been the target market of the media since COVID. You have the Andrew Tates of the world. You have the red pill community. You have so many. You even have the Donald Trumps, the
And
Joe Rogans. You have so much
I,
culture.
and I don't want to start putting names or labels on this. I'm simply speaking to how young male creates the space of being confident, clear, and empowered to be a decent human. Does that
And
make
that's the
sense?
problem. But that's why I brought up those names, because in a lot of instances, those names don't do a good job for young
Mhm.
men.
Mhm.
And obviously, it's the case by case, of course, and there is value to them, but they don't do a great job when it comes to these men being operating in society, because a
Right.
lot of times
Well,
men have
operating
trauma.
with, yeah, operating
Okay,
with
go
a
ahead.
healthy masculine because of, I'm going to use your word, the trauma that
Yeah.
they've experienced.
So, first of all, why does psychological trauma occur in childhood? And how
It's,
do you, or let's answer that first.
yeah, but it is a natural part of every single human's experience. We all have a break from love. There is not one person out there that is immune from a break from love.
Mm,
And one of the reasons I like working with younger people is the earlier they understand that, the easier it is to transform it. Again, using the example of the people that witnessed the assassination, the young man that was my client 3 or 4 years ago, he just got it.
mm.
He is strong. He just understood because he understood what I was talking about. And even the family members, right? The mom and the wife of one of them, even they got it. And then a sister who wasn't even there, but these are her brothers that experienced this. They got it. Now the one gentleman, what I was told is that night he cracked open because he was holding everything in.
Mm.
So he is on the path of healing. And that's where empowerment comes from.
So that's a great point you just made. And it's a little repetitive, but it is an important question that people are probably asking, is how do I heal my childhood trauma?
I wrote a book last year. It's called Wounds to Wisdom: The Art of Healing Trauma.
Mm,
That book is my process. But for those who want to move quicker, because oftentimes self help books become shelf help books
yeah.
because they sit on the damn shelf over there. And that's why a transformational coach might be the perfect thing for you watching this,
Especially for young men. Because again,
especially for young men.
young
And
men
you
don't have
know,
the sources, they don't have the tools, they don't know where to
right,
go.
right. And I wanna, and the funny thing about young people, and I'm just gonna say this about all young people, right, is that parents, unfortunately, when they get those teen years, they don't hear parents.
Yeah.
They hear grandmothers, grandfathers, aunts, uncles, and coaches. That's why if your child is in a sports program, it's
Mhm.
coached by an external person. They hear the coach, what the coach says, but there, right, in a sports area, the only thing the coach wants to do is maximize the performance of the team, so they don't get into the head stuff. As a
Mhm.
life architect, I get into the head stuff. I have you understand how you create this experience called life.
And I think that's very vital. I mean, you look at, for a sports example, you look at Colorado football team.
Hmm.
Deion Sanders is one of the few coaches that actually does, as you mentioned, get into the head stuff. I remember he brought in
Yeah.
Brittany Renner to speak to the athletes about, the potential of women that could, try to take advantage of them. And most importantly, he left an imprint on some of these players like Travis Hunter that will always be there. And to your point, that's one of the benefits of Jim is leaving that imprint that 2 years later he could be your former client, or he could be a former coach, but when something happens, you have someone to call, you have someone to listen. That's the biggest thing, because it's the case of athletes like you mentioned. Travis Hunter is a Heisman winner, number 2 pick in the NFL, very highly coveted. So again, even helping him goes back to maximizing performance versus the average guy, even in the football team, who might be a third string player, or he
Hmm.
might not even be on the field, or in the case of the Penn State situation that happened a couple years back where there was abuse in that situation. A lot of times that stuff is silenced. And that's the problem with men, is that we're told, say nothing.
Right.
Oh, I'm
Right.
fine. Oh, nothing's wrong. So
Don't
what
cry.
do you give? Exactly. Don't
Yeah.
cry, you're not a man.
Yeah.
What advice
Man up.
do you give to men that are bogged down? They're at the point of suicide almost, and they don't know what to do, and they
Yep.
have nowhere to turn because society has told them to just shut up and deal with it. That mainstream has told them that depression doesn't exist, and they have no outlet to turn.
Yeah.
What message do you have for those men?
This is what coaching's about. It is about understanding you. And
Mm,
when you understand you and those insecure, those dark thoughts, when they come up, you can see them and say, not today. Not today.
mm. So they'll
Because
communicate with you. Oh, I'm sorry, Jim. You keep telling.
yeah, no, no, no. They do communicate. It's like I have a pair of brothers that are on. Anytime they need me, they call. And right now, I'm working with one young man in three critical areas of his life,
Mm,
and he is winning. He is winning, and it is amazing to see his growth. And I've been with the family for a few years now. And the thing is when the young men need coaching, and these aren't even troubled men. These are just people. These the younger brother already has the wisdom of a mid 30s to mid 40s man, and the
mm,
older brother is getting there, and they are making incredibly wise choices while they're still in school. Can you imagine what's going to happen when they get out? They're going to be amazing men. They're examples.
and that is a really important thing for the audience to know. Because I know how a lot of men think, oh, why do I need coaching? The thing that he
Yeah.
said that really should make you think is, not only is he helping you with overcoming trauma, but he's helping you with maturing, with maturity. Because
Yeah.
men, our brains do not fully develop until about 25.
I was going to
So
say 22 to 25. Exactly.
22 to 25. So from 18 to 22, that's college age, and possibly from 22 to 25, you're still maturing. You're still figuring out, what do I want to be with my life? What do I want to do? What man do I want to be? Do I have a relationship? Do I have a girlfriend?
So,
Do I have a, whatever
yeah.
it is?
Yeah.
Jim, that coaching is more than just you overcoming trauma. It's you helping to become a man.
Yeah. And it's you helping to create an incredibly successful life
Mm,
and then living with the joy at a very young age, living with confidence, living with clarity, understanding that the trauma was something that happened way back when, but you're focused forward and you're not on pharmaceuticals. And all of a sudden you surround yourself with strong men. It is an incredible thing.
to touch on that, what's the power of community? Because there's a stat, and I want to pull up that stat. What percentage of men have no friends?
Oh my God. Yeah. Pull that
So this
stat up. I want to hear this.
to the LA Times. LA
Okay.
Times, more than 1 in 7 men have no close friends. This according
Yeah.
to AI Overview Google. Approximately
Yeah.
15% of men report having no close friends, a fivefold increase since 1990, according to a 2021 study by the Survey Center on American Life. Other estimates suggest 20% of single men lack close friends, and 15% of men under 30 report having not one. So as you see,
See, if you are not in community as a man, you are going to let your insecurities rule you.
mm,
And that is where it is like you are on a foundation of thin ice and you're too scared to do anything. I have strong men around me, and they are amazing men. And it gives me the confidence to be even better myself. And it's interesting, right? You and I met on a networking site. This week on that networking site, I have met 4 powerful men that I have had. You are one of 4 powerful men. I want to surround myself with empowered men because it makes a difference.
100%. And I think that is one of the biggest crises in the US, that
Yes,
there's a lack of fathers and there's a lack of friends.
right. And there's a lack of solid friends.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if I went and coached a whole team of some sport and everybody got to understand themselves? Can you imagine the powerhouse that team would be? Because one of the things about being a male is that when we understand the weaknesses of another man, we may chide and joke about that because that's how men are. But if you're on a team and all of a sudden you're doing an organized team thing, and I don't care what that is, you have each other's back. And I've got to think back the example of the Spartans. And if you think of the movie 300, one of the things about the phalanx, right, is about that when they had a defensive pose, every man was protecting the man on his left. He would give his life to make sure that person kept theirs. And by going all the way around, that provided an impenetrable circle.
Mm,
That's what I want to bring to manhood now, is the ability. So we joke, right? And if you've ever watched the movie 300, it's such a phenomenal example of how men interact. But if you ever watch that, the thing is these men had vicious, really vicious humor. But when push came to shove, and if you really look at the historical aspects, in a matter of days, they killed between 15 and 20,000 enemies with 300 men. Xerxes was so frustrated, and they viewed life different. So when those 300 lost their lives, that is how they got to heaven. But the thing is if you look at the rumors of what happened, they took and they cut their heads off and they put them on posts, right? And Leonidas's head, the rumor is that even his enemies would walk around the head because they were afraid of it, even in death, because they were such strong and authentic men. And just for clarification, I'm not talking about men who beat women. I'm not talking about men who are verbally or physically abusive. Those are not men. That is the byproduct of a weak society. I am talking about empowered men that stand for humanity.
And for the younger crowd, or people my age, I mean, a lot of people know 300, but two movies that I always remember. One's my father's favorite movie, and another one is something I thought of when you were speaking about sports. Coach Carter and um, the Denzel Washington movie, the Remember the Titans.
Yeah,
Those
remember the Titans.
movies,
Great movie.
my
Yes.
dad loves that movie, and they
Mm-hmm.
illustrate the power of a coach. You look at Coach Carter, for example. You look at the end of that movie. They don't talk about the athletes going to the NBA. They talk about the athletes that made something of their lives. They graduated college, they got a job, they became productive members of society. And remember the Titans. You had a system in which mass racism, blacks versus whites,
Yeah.
each other. You had a
Yeah.
school where if they lost one game, he was getting fired. He was done. And he was able to take two different groups. I always remember this scene. It was towards the end of the movie. It was when Bobby, I think his name was Bobby. Yeah, it was Bobby. He just got a car accident. Julius was at the door. I'm getting chills just thinking of it. And the nurse comes in. Her name was Doris. And he goes, Doris, don't you see the resemblance? That's family. And that is the essence of a good coach. That a
Yes.
coach can take men and mold them into something where they now are thinking bigger than themselves. And that's the benefit of working with someone like Jim, is that he can take your trauma. Because you don't think those guys had trauma. You don't think those guys in Remember the Titans had trauma. You're a high schooler and you have racial slurs being thrown at you everywhere you go. The school hates you. You don't even know if your own team likes you. Then you have the movie in Coach Carter where you're in a poor environment, putting one person in their lives change the whole trajectory of their life. And going to someone for your trauma as a young man, maybe in your 20s, maybe you're in your early teens, and speaking with someone like Jim can change the trajectory
Yeah.
of your entire life. Now, getting coached from someone that not only understands you and your trauma because he's been there, but he's pulling from a multiplicity of modals and sources that you, as a 19-year-old kid, don't have to go to Peru and do ayahuasca now.
Yeah. No,
Because
you don't. Would you like to live an empowered life? Or if you had children, would you like your young men to be raised, to be empowered, confident, and clear? Really have a level of healthy masculinity? Because that's what my commitment is.
and the thing is that you can say, "Oh, well, I'll just do it myself. I'll do this. I'll do that." You're going to spend a lot more money. You're going to waste a lot more time, and you're probably not going to heal the childhood trauma the way you want it to because you're being cheap. And I know because I've been cheap myself. So I'm speaking from a place where I've had someone that can help with PTSD say, Sam, can't, because I've dealt with it. When I was
Yep.
growing up, I was bullied. I was
Yep.
bullied every day in high school and middle school. I never spoke really about this publicly, but I was bullied. But it wasn't the bullying that gave me the PTSD. It was the fact that I was robbed multiple times in high school. So that
Yeah,
created
right?
this distrust for everyone.
Especially, tell me who robbed you.
It was people I thought were friends. It was guys that I thought were my friends. I gave them a ride, and then they took my watch, they took my gold chain, they took my money out of my car. So it's like you don't know who
Yep.
to trust. And then to your
Well, see,
point,
see, Right. And I just want to say, right, in
Yeah.
that moment, not only were you betrayed by your friends, but now moving forward, who can I
Yep.
trust?
Yep.
Imagine living your life through the filter of I can't trust anybody. It leads you to a very disappointing and a very sad life.
And to his point, I'm 29 years old. I lived most of my 20s with that exact mentality, that who
Yeah.
can I trust? I can't trust family. I can't trust friends. I can't trust anybody. And it took me
Yep.
this and last year being on my own healing journey, going to Suriname and doing these places and meeting people and realizing that this is how I can heal. But it's a
Yep.
process. So, with that, Jim, my final question for you is how can the audience get in touch with you, and what is the next steps for people to get that healing?
So the easiest way to get in touch with me is to email me, jim@amazinglifedesign.com. We will set up an initial meeting where you can see if working with a life architect is right for you. Because the thing is not everybody is right and not everybody is prepared. You've
Mm,
got to be ready because this is work. But as a result of the work, you not only get your life back, but you get an amazing life. And where you're sitting now, you cannot see the sunshine that life will become, because sometimes those clouds, right? That trauma, that drama tends to cloud it up. But my commitment is that each and every person that I interact with is better as a result of the work we do together.
mm. So that's Jim Pehkonen,
Well, it's
life
just Jim. It's just Jim at Amazing Life Design.
Jim at Amazing Life Design. I'll put
Yeah.
that so you guys can see it, and check out his website. And he will be live on the website soon. And that has been our latest episode of Decent Med Spotlight. Thank you for your time.
Yep. And Sam, thank you very much. And for those of you listening, thank you for giving the greatness of your life a chance. For that, I am eternally grateful. Thank you.